Hello, my beautiful lovies. Today we are in blackout mode because this story is for all of my friends, not just females, but it is directed towards women. But it is a resource for those of us who have witnessed trauma or unfortunately been subjected to trauma and violence. And our book is What to Do When Love Turns Violent, a practical resource for women in abusive relationships. Written by Marian Betancourt. Preface. I have a distant memory. I'm sitting up in my bed, calling out to my mother, "Don't hit Daddy!" I say this over and over. I am 3 years old, but I fear for my mother's life if she hits my father back. He has been drinking, and he has been hitting her. Years later, my mother told me how hurt she was because she believed I wanted to protect my father from any possible blows from her. I was never able to convince her, to the contrary, that it was my fear for her safety that prompted the remark. But this is a hazy recollection, layered with years. I remember the fear, not the details. My father was an intelligent, upwardly mobile middle manager. He and my mother were yuppies of their day, striving for the good life. My father was also an alcoholic. When I was 5, he left my mother and me to marry another woman. My mother and I had a hard scrabble life after that. She was devastated by the broken dream, became chronically ill, physically and emotionally, and I grew up wanting more than anything to have someone to love. So I got married as soon as I could to have babies. I was an era somewhere between Elvis and the Beatles. My husband, 11 years my senior, seemed so settled, so steady. He had a job and lived in a row house his father owned. I had babies, and I loved them, still do, but I did not but I did not rest. I had babies and loved them. Okay. Because my husband was frequently laid off and working in a dying trade, I worked at whatever jobs I could get in the days before daycare and house husbands. My husband's solution to unemployment was to hang out in the local bar rather than learn another trade. Drinking often prompted the violence, but there were certainly times when he was sober. I know he loved me, and sometimes he was able to say it or show it, but the violence is what defined our relationship, and the violence is what I remember. This is not a distant memory. It's very close, and I remember every detail. The first time I was beaten for refusing to cook something the way he liked it. Another time, I was beaten for having a minor accident with the car. Once, I was beaten for challenging his order for me to take the children to Sunday school, even though he was the one who claimed to have religious faith. By this time, my frustration level in trying to communicate was well into the danger zone. I said, "Fuck Sunday school." Then I tried to cover my face with my arms as he dragged me off the couch, tossed me onto the floor, and proceeded to kick me. He always wore steel-toed work shoes. Toward the stairs, I was able to grab the door frame to slow the momentum of my body bouncing down a flight of stairs. It was the incident that finally sent me out of the house in search of safety. Forced to leave without my sleeping children, 2 and 4, I went to a neighbor's house, and her husband, a man half the size of my husband, immediately got out of bed, pulled on his pants, and started for the door to straighten this guy out. My friend and I held him back because he might have been killed if he had interfered. Once again, the flashback to distant memory, begging my mother not to fight back. After an hour, I gathered my courage and went back. I had to. I could not leave my children. I didn't have the money to go anyplace, and even though I had been working to support us in the years of violence, I never once considered that I might be able to find shelter somewhere or have him arrested. But when I went inside that house again, I did warn him that if he did it again, I would call the police, and he shrugged. It made no difference to him. Most of the people around us, friends and family, considered domestic violence a private thing. They did not want to know. They avoided looking at the black and blue whelps up and down my arms and around my back. I began secretly saving some money from each paycheck and opened my own bank account. I went to the library to research divorce. It took me 3 years to get out and to find a secure job and a place I could afford to live and to provide care for my children. During those years, my husband continued to threaten and abuse me. One afternoon, while he lingered at the neighborhood bar, I stole away with my children and a suitcase. He demanded that I bring his children back or he would not support them. He stalked the home I now shared with another woman and her 3 children. We worked rotating shifts, so one of us was always home with the 5 children. And he stood outside at night watching, making sure I would not go out with another man. Sound familiar, anyone? Oh, I knew this story was going to strike close to home. Always does. I'm learning as I get older that this is more common story than we're led to believe, and that we're definitely not alone, because there are so many families who avoid any accountability or sticking their head in the sand over such incidents. Okay, let me stop rambling. He stood out at night, back to the point, making sure I would not go out with another man. Was he out there with a gun? I did not feel safe leaving my house. He had often bragged threatening about his hidden guns. Many years later, my son confirmed that he indeed had at least 2 guns hidden in the basement, and eventually he ceased stalking. But then I faced another 3 years of frustration with the justice system, because domestic violence gave me grounds for divorce in the New York State. But because I wanted alimony, child support, and my belongings, which were still in the house, the justice system became impatient with me, and my lawyer said, "You can't win every case." During the preliminary hearings, my ex-husband admitted to the beatings, and one court official said, "You know you should not do that." It was a mere slap on the hand, a naughty, naughty rebuke. No one, from police to lawyers to judges, ever suggested he get some psychological help, that he might have a serious problem, that it was a crime to assault your spouse, just as it is a crime to assault a stranger on the street. Help us, Jesus. Oh, times have not changed a hell of a lot, but we have made some progress. There is help out there now, and with this book, I mean to help you find it. And dear sweet friends, oh, I hope I can help you find it too, and I hope it doesn't trigger me too much with my extra rants on the little side notes. I'll ask for your forgiveness in advance. All right, disclaimer. This book is meant to educate women about the resources available to help them to be safe if they are or were in a relationship with abusive men. There is help available in every state and city, but naturally some communities are more responsive and better organized than others. This book often suggests no solutions. Before you take any action, evaluate your safety and talk with your local domestic violence advocates. They are there to help you. Lord, I hope they're there to help you. Chapter 1. How the police can help you. Reporting domestic violence to police appears to reduce the risk of a husband attacking his wife again by as much as 62%. Data from the National Crime Victimization Survey. I'm going to restart one.